Good morning, students. In yesterday class, we discussed about de Broglie wavelength. What are matter waves? What is the de Broglie wavelength? And how to derive an expression for de Broglie wavelength of a photon and also other particles, general particles. And what are the properties of the matter waves? How de Broglie wavelength depends upon various parameters we discussed. And last we have given a de Broglie wavelength of a charged particle, I think. For electron, one shortcut value given, lambda is equal to 12.27 by root V angstrom unit given. Same model, if any other particles given, for example, how to write the formula? Yesterday, electron given, now if it is a proton, what is a de Broglie wavelength of a proton? So here mass of the proton m is equal to 1.6729 or 1.67 into 10 to the power of minus 27 kg. It is a mass of the proton. And the charge of the proton Q is equal to 1.602 into 10 to the power of minus 19 coulomb. With this data, we should calculate a de Broglie wavelength of the photon in a shortcut manner. So lambda is equal to general value formula h by square root of 2m into qv. It is a formula for finding the de Broglie wavelength of a proton. By substituting all the values here, we'll get Planck's constant 6.625 into 10 to the power of minus 34 divided by square root of 2 into mass of the proton 1.672 into 10 power minus 27 into charge of the proton 1.602 into 10 power minus 19, but the potential difference where the proton is accelerating is V. So by simplifying all these values, we'll get 0.286 by root V angstrom unit. So calculate the value later and note down this formula where V is equal to potential difference and lambda is equal to de Broglie wavelength of the proton. So it is a formula to find the de Broglie wavelength of the proton, only proton. Same model, how to find the de Broglie wavelength of a deuteron? In case of the deuteron, how to find? So you can write the 1H2 isotope of the hydrogen. Here you should write the mass of the deuteron is equal to 2 times the mass of the proton. 2 times the mass of the proton you should write here. And the charge of the deuteron Q is equal to same, equal to the charge of the proton. Both are equal. Equal to 1.602 into 10 to the power of minus 19 coulomb. Here you should write lambda deuteron is equal to h by square root of 2m into, here m means mass of the deuteron, into charge q into v. That is equal to h by square root of 2 into, in place of the mass of the deuteron, we can write a 2 into mass of the proton. That is equal into 2 into mass of the proton into qv. So remaining a total formula here and there same except root 2. You should write it is equal to 1 by root 2 into this total value is equal to h by square root of 2m into qv. Here m means mass of the proton. Here also m represents mass of the proton. But already we calculated this total value equal to 1 by root 2. 1 by root 2 value is equal to 1.414 into this total value already we obtained 0.286 by root V. I'll write it is equal to 0.286 by root V angstrom unit. Now check this value 0.286 by 0.286 divided by 1.414. But the root V value no need to change. 0.202 by root V will get angstrom unit. It is a de Broglie wavelength of the deuteron. For electron 12.27 by root V, proton 0.286 by root V, and deuteron 0.202 by root V. Same model in case of the triton given or TTM 1H3. Next D, I'll write for triton. So I'll write the isotope of the hydrogen 1H3. I'll write here mass and charge. So mass of the triton is equal to 3 times the mass of the proton, but charge is same. Charge of the triton and the charge of the proton both are equal to 1.602 into 10 to the power of minus 19 coulomb. Same value should write. If you substitute here, de Broglie wavelength of the triton is equal to mass of the triton, you should write here. And I'll write it is equal to H by square root of 2 into mass of the triton is equal to 3 times mass of the proton into Q into V, which is equal to 1 by root 3 times of this value should write H by square root of 2m into mass of the proton into charge into V should write. But 1 by root 3 value 1.732 into, so this value already we obtained 0.286 by this value should write 0.286 by root V. Now check this one, 0.286 by 1.732, 0.165 by root V angstrom unit. It is a de Broglie wavelength of the triton. Next I'll give alpha particle. So next E, for an alpha particle. So alpha particle is nothing but a helium nucleus which contains 2 protons and 2 neutrons. Write the symbol He with atomic number 2 and mass number 4. Now mass of the alpha particle is equal to 4 times mass of the proton. Charge of the alpha particle is equal to 2 times the charge of the proton. Now we should substitute here in this formula. De Broglie wavelength of the alpha particle lambda alpha is equal to mass H by root of 2m into alpha. Here also Q alpha I should write. And the mass of the alpha particle place may substitute 4 times the mass of the proton, that is equal to H by square root of 2 into that is mass of the alpha particle 4 times mass of the proton into charge of the alpha particle is equal to 2 times the charge of the proton into V should write. That is equal to 1 by root 8 we have. 1 by root 8 into remaining value is equal to H by root of 2 into mass of the proton into charge of the proton into V should write. That is equal to 1 by root 8 or 1 by 2 root 2 into this value already we know 0.286 by root V, 1 by 2.828. Now we should divide this value 0.286 by this value should write 2.828 equal to 0.101 divided by root V angstrom unit lambda alpha particle. So these are de Broglie wavelength of the various particles. So it is a de Broglie wavelength and the formula for de Broglie wavelength of the various particles. And one more, for simple 2 marks question also there. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. It may be asked for 1 mark or 2 marks question. What is a Heisenberg's uncertainty principle? So according to de Broglie hypothesis, we know any particle is in a motion, some of the waves are associated with a moving particle, and those waves are called matter waves or de Broglie waves. So because of the motion, the particle generally having momentum and also kinetic energy. So that's why how the particle will behave means the waves around the particles are associated means the particle has a dual nature. It has both the particle nature and also wave nature. But here according to Heisenberg's principle, it is a very difficult to find both position of the particle and the momentum of the particle at a time accurately. For example, in case of the daily life, any automobile is in motion, like a car is in motion. So the car has motion means it has a momentum. And for example, at a particular time, at a particular instant, I want to find the position of the car and also momentum of the car. So because of the mass of the car is more and the velocity is less, so we can calculate both momentum and also position of the car almost accurately. But in case of the microscopic particles like electron, proton, or very small particles which are moving with very higher speeds comparing to speed of the light, it is a very difficult to find the position of the particle as well as the momentum of the particle simultaneously and accurately. For example, if you find the position of the particle at a particular instant or at a particular place exactly, but we cannot find momentum exactly, and vice versa. If a momentum calculated exactly, but we cannot find position accurately. For example, a particle is in a motion in a space, and there are number of waves are associated around the particle. For example, if at a particular instant of time, x is the position of the particle, displacement or position of the particle is equal to x, and there will be some error or uncertainty in x is equal to, we may write a delta x. In the first year we have errors and measurements concept is there, absolute error, relative error, percentage errors are there. For example, x is the position of the particle. If a position of the particle is equal x and a error or absolute error in the position of the particle is equal to delta x. Here delta x means true value minus a measured value is called delta x. If a momentum of the particle is equal to p, we know already momentum is equal to product of mass and velocity of the particle. If a momentum of the particle is a p and a error or uncertainty in the momentum is equal to delta p. Here also delta p is equal to true momentum minus a measured momentum. So here delta p is equal to error or uncertainty in the momentum of the particle, and delta x is uncertainty in the position of the particle. If x value exactly if you are able to calculate, then we cannot find momentum accurately. So that means if you multiply the product of delta x and delta p if you take is always greater than or equal to h bar, but generally here h bar is equal to h by 2 pi you should write, Planck's constant h value. But generally most rigorous experiments, accurate experiments says that it is equal to half of the h bar you should write, h bar by 2 we can write. So according to Heisenberg's principle, uncertainty principle, it is difficult to find both the position and the momentum of a particle accurately and simultaneously. If delta x is equal to 0, delta x 0 means without any error I calculated position of the particle, then delta p may be infinity. That means error or uncertainty in the momentum is equal to very large. If momentum I calculated accurately, means no error. If delta p is equal to 0, then delta x must be infinity. But the product of these two values should never be 0. So the product of delta x and delta p always greater than or equal to h bar by 2 or half of the h bar, where h bar is equal to h by 2 pi. So where h is equal to Planck's constant already we know. If you substitute in the above formula, delta x into delta p is equal to h by 2 into 2 pi means it is equal to 4 pi, should write. So delta x into delta p is equal to h by 4 pi, you should write. So here in this formula, if you want to calculate delta x value, error in the position of the particle or uncertainty in the position of the particle is equal to h by 4 pi into delta p, you should write. So if you want to calculate error in the position of the particle, we should take delta p right side. Same manner, if you want to calculate error in the momentum of the particle, take delta x right side. H by it is equal to 4 pi into delta x, you should write. But we know momentum is equal to formula product of mass and velocity. So we can write delta p is equal to nothing but the product of mass and change in velocity of the particle, delta v. So which is equal to h by 4 pi into delta x. So take a delta v also right side, then we can write, or m also right side. Error in the velocity of the particle, delta v is equal to h by it is equal to 4 pi m into delta x, we can write. So it is equal to error in velocity of the particle, error in momentum of the particle, error in position of the particle. So with this we can calculate the different parameters. So from Heisenberg uncertainty principle, you can say if delta x is equal to 0, delta x is equal to 0 means I calculated momentum of the particle accurately. So without any error, I calculated momentum position of the particle. Then what about momentum means delta p approaches almost infinity. So infinite value will be there, and vice versa. Similarly, if delta p is equal to 0, I calculated momentum of the particle more accurately without any error. Then delta x approaches to infinity. Delta x almost equal to infinity, should write. That's why both cannot be calculated at a time. If for example delta x is increasing, then delta p value should be decreased. If a delta x is decreasing and a delta p value should be increased. For example, if I calculated momentum of the particle accurately, delta p is equal to 0. So delta p is equal to 0 meaning there will be no error in the momentum of the particle. Then p is equal to finite. So p is equal to having a finite value. Exactly, I calculated a momentum of the particle with a finite value. But from de Broglie equation, lambda is equal to formula h by p. Here already I calculated momentum without error. So p is accurate and p is a finite value. Then from this formula, when p is a finite, what about lambda value? Also a finite value. So from this lambda is also I calculated accurately having a finite value. Whenever lambda is having a finite value, meaning it is having a particular finite value means the de Broglie wave is extended throughout the space like this. When a particle is in motion, the matter wave or de Broglie wave extended up to what point means it may extended up to infinite distance. So whenever any wave having a finite wavelength, so the wave can spread throughout the universe. So whenever the wave is spreading throughout universe means, so that means the position of the particle will be infinite. The particle may be anywhere throughout the universe. But in general, what we can say, whenever a particle is in a motion, the wave may not be appeared like this. So the waves are appeared like this. So what does it represents means, so here some of the waves which are having nearly same amplitudes or frequencies are superposed like this. For example, an electron is in a motion in an open space and all the waves are associated around the electron, and the waves which are having a nearly same amplitude or same frequency are superposed, and because of the superposition there is a constructive and a destructive interference takes place. and where the position of the particle is probability is there or chance is there. It is for example position of the particle, and there all the waves are constructively interfered, like crest of the first wave and the crest of the second wave, or trough of the first wave and the trough of the second wave, like this. And because of this superposition, all the waves are add up, and because of the adding, the intensity become maximum. So at that point the intensity becomes a maximum. You should write like this. And for example, at some other places I choose here. Here if you select means what about the amplitude or intensity? Minimum. And almost equal to 0 we can write I minimum. And where it becomes minimum means where there is no particle, probability of the particle, there all the waves are destructively interfered like this. They try to cancel, and because of this cancellation the amplitude or intensity become minimum. So this concept given by the scientist Max Born. I'll say that point here. So here actually this wave is called, wave is spreading throughout the universe. Here delta p is equal to 0, but p is a finite, lambda also finite, but it is a wave packet. Wave packet means a group of all the matter waves are superposed to form a wave packet or a wave function. But here one interpretation also given by one scientist Max Born. Max Born. Max Born's interpretation. Max Born's interpretation. What Max Born generally saying means when a particle is in motion in the space, all the waves are associated around the particle, and they are called matter waves or de Broglie waves. And all these waves are almost superposed with nearly amplitudes are nearly same frequency, and the wave appear like a wave packet. So wave packet generally, the wave packet, if you take for example a probability density is there, probability density, probability density. So we can represent with the symbol as psi. Probability density is equal to psi. What is the meaning of probability density means it is equal to probability per unit volume. Probability of finding the particle at a point divided by the small space, or we can write volume, we should write here. So probability density is equal to probability of finding the particle at a point divided by the small volume at that around the particle you should take. So we can represent this value symbol as a psi is equal to probability by, so probability is not a physical quantity, that's why we are using a probability density, divided by volume is equal to delta V, I'll write. So take delta V left side, then a probability of finding the particle in the open space at a particular point, probability is equal to, so psi into delta V should write. So what Max Born saying means where the intensity of the wave is maximum, when the wave is moving like this, or when a particle is moving like this and all the waves are associated, there is a wave packet or wave function where the intensity of the wave is a maximum. At that point the probability of finding the particle is also maximum, and where the intensity of the wave is a minimum, there the probability of finding the particle is also minimum. So we can write here probability density is always, probability density is always proportional to intensity of the wave, intensity of the wave. So we can write here psi proportional to intensity I, but intensity of the wave is always directly proportional to square of the amplitude. More the amplitude of the wave, more the intensity of the wave, more the intensity of the wave, more the probability density. More the probability density means more the probability of the wave also. So therefore we can say probability is proportional to probability of the wave or particle finding at a particular point is a proportional to, we can write here psi, but psi is a proportional to a square, you should write. So which is equal to a square magnitude into delta V also we can write. So simply what Max Born saying means, when an electron is moving in the space, like this. So around the electron there are number of waves associated according to de Broglie, and those waves are called matter waves or de Broglie waves. And for example, in this class is a total one space, for example, or vacuum, and it is a position of the particle. If for example there is a possibility of a position of the particle here, around the particle there are number of waves, but all the waves are having a maximum intensity. If the intensity of the wave is a maximum, and at that point the probability of finding the particle also maximum. For example, if an electron is present here and at this point electron not there, so at that point how the waves will be, intensity become minimum, they are destructively interfered and the total intensity of the wave become minimum. So simply we can write, according to Max Born, the probability of finding the particle at a point in the space is always directly proportional to intensity of the particle at that point. If the intensity of the wave is a maximum, probability of finding the particle also maximum. If the intensity of the wave is a minimum, probability of finding the particle also minimum. We can write simply. Or if you want to note down that one statement, according to Max Born, the probability of, the probability of finding a moving particle at a point, in this space, probability of the moving a particle at a point in the space is directly proportional to, or is proportional to the intensity of the wave, at that point, One more point, if the intensity of the wave is a maximum, then the probability of finding the particle, at that point, is a maximum, and vice versa. Probability of finding the particle at that point is the maximum, and vice versa. So it is Heisenberg uncertainty principle and Max Born's probability interpretation. And the last part of this chapter, one experiment given, simple experiment, Davison-Germer experiment. Davison and Germer experiment. Davison-Germer experiment. But generally the PU level, they are given in the syllabus, only experimental conclusion or result has to be considered, and the total explanation and procedure of the experiment should be neglected, not necessary. In exam 5 marks question may not be asked, but you have to remember what is the conclusion, what is the result, or what is the aim of the experiment, only you have to remember. So that it is one of the first experiment to prove the wave nature of the particle. But theoretically, who predicted the wave nature of particles? De Broglie. So de Broglie first predicted in 1924 around the wave nature of the particle. Whenever electron or some of the particles are in motion, the waves are associated with a moving particle, and they are called matter waves or de Broglie waves. So the wave nature of electron first theoretically predicted by de Broglie, but experimentally verified by Davison and Germer. So these two members experimentally verified, but in 1927. So what is the main conclusion of this experiment? To verify the wave nature of electrons, or to prove the wave nature of electrons. It is used to prove, or it confirms wave nature of electrons. It confirms wave nature of electron. So these two members, Davison and Germer, both conducted experiment and both proved the wave nature of electron. But in 1927, they confirmed this experiment. But later, one more scientist, G.P. Thomson, in 1928, he also conducted experiment. In 1928, he also conducted experiment, and he also proved the wave nature of electrons. But this experiment in 1927 conducted by Davison and Germer. But G.P. Thomson experiment also proved the wave nature of electrons. G.P. Thomson experiment also confirmed wave nature of electron. It is also confirmed wave nature of electron. That's why in 1937, Davison and also G.P. Thomson both got a Nobel Prize, and both shared the Nobel Prize for this experiment. So Davison and also G.P. Thomson. And one more interesting thing, in around 1897, electron was first discovered by J.J. Thomson. Electron first discovered by J.J. Thomson. According to J.J. Thomson, electron is a particle. It has a mass and also charge. It is a particle. But after 30 years of discovery of electron, J.J. Thomson's son, G.P. Thomson, he proved electron is a wave. Electron not only a particle, but also wave. So G.P. Thomson is a son of J.J. Thomson. So J.J. Thomson discovered electron, and he proved it is a particle. But after 30 years, G.P. Thomson proved it is a wave. So that's why it is one of the important experiment also. But in our syllabus, only they given Davison and Germer experiment. So 2-3 times they asked a PUC question. What is the conclusion of Davison-Germer experiment? What is the final result? Or what is the aim? Or what is the conclusion? So you have to say simple answer. Davison-Germer experiment confirms the wave nature of electron. Electron behaves as a wave. That you have to say. So now one schematic diagram, and here some simple formula given. I'll draw the diagram. So the experiment mainly contains one evacuated chamber. So without any air or other gases, the total experiment contains one evacuated chamber like this. Whenever we are using evacuated chamber, when electrons are moving along the forward direction, so there will be no loss of kinetic energy of electron. Otherwise, when it is having something gas or air, the electrons may collide with the gas molecules, and they may lose some energy also. To avoid that one, the total chamber is completely evacuated. It is one evacuated chamber. And in this chamber, we are providing one nickel crystal. It is a nickel crystal. Like it acts like a 3-dimensional diffraction grating. It is a nickel crystal. It contains atoms. Why we have to choose a particularly nickel crystal means the space between atomic planes of the nickel crystal is nearly comparable to the wavelength of the electron. So the electron, when it is moving along the forward direction, electron behave like a wave, and a wave means electron having something wavelength. So the wavelength of the electron is nearly equal to the spacing between atomic planes of the nickel crystal. For example, in the nickel crystal, it is one atomic plane, it is a next atomic plane, it is equal third one, and so on. You should write like this. The space between any two atomic planes, if you take, it is nearly equal to wavelength of the electron beam. That's why we have chosen a nickel crystal. That's important. So one nickel crystal is selected and we have placed it here. And now I am placing one anode. Here we have to place one anode like this. The anode is like a cylindrical structure which is having a small hole at its center. So to allow a fine beam of electrons, instead of allowing all the electrons at a time, and we can allow a fine beam of electrons. That's why we are choosing one anode. Next here one electron gun. Here electron gun means we should take tungsten filament which is coated with a barium oxide. It is an electron gun. We should take like this. So why we are calling electron gun means it can emit the electrons or it can release the electrons. That's why we are calling as electron gun. So it is equal to filament F. The filament is generally made of tungsten which is coated with a barium oxide, and this electron gun is connected to one low tension battery, one DC battery we are connecting like this. It is equal low tension battery. We can provide a suitable potential difference. So left side is equal to positive and right side is equal negative. One simple battery we are connected here. So this is nothing but electron gun, and it is anode. May give the symbol as A. It is equal to nickel crystal. It is a nickel crystal, and it is evacuated chamber. Evacuated chamber, and it is electron gun. Electron gun, and this A represents anode. So here this electron gun and also anode both are connected to one high tension battery, so that we can apply accelerated potential. It is connected to one high tension battery like this. So it is a bigger terminal indicates a plus, smaller indicates a minus. Here I am writing a HT, high tension battery, and this will be connected to one rheostat or a potential divider. Here they are connected. I am using a symbol as RH, rheostat, potential divider, and this potential divider will be connected to anode. Next here, for measurement of the current flowing through circuit, we have to use one galvanometer and also a movable detector or collector. Here I am using one circular shape movable detector like this. So throughout we can rotate this detector having a circular scale also, and so that we can collect the scattered beam of electrons, and then we can find the current flowing through circuit also, and the current flowing through circuit will indicate the intensity of the wave like this one circular scale. And this circular scale we are providing a galvanometer. One galvanometer also provided like this. A sensitive galvanometer is connected like this, and this total can be called as a movable detector or collector. Movable detector which contains a galvanometer and also a circular scale. So it is the apparatus which were used for Davison-Germer experiment. Now check here what are the main apparatus here means. One is the first one, we can say electron gun. One important part of this experiment is electron gun. So what does electron gun contains? An electron gun contains one filament F. So which is it is a tungsten, made of tungsten and coated with a barium oxide. And this electron gun is connected to one low tension battery. Whenever we are completed circuit, your switch will be on and the current will be supplied to the filament. The filament gets heated. Whenever the filament heated means electrons are emitted from the filament, and that process called as thermionic emission. Earlier already we discussed what are the types of electron emission. So the process of emission of electrons from the surface of the hot metal is called as thermionic emission. Here also the metal gun or electron gun gets heated filament, and because of the heating, electrons are emitted from the filament like this. So number of electrons are emitted from the filament here. Once if electrons are emitted from the filament, now what we have to do means we have to apply accelerating a potential by using a high tension battery, and all these electrons are accelerated towards anode. So all the electrons are moving towards anode like this. Number of electrons are moving towards anode, but all the electrons which instant on the anode are not allowed to go outside. Only there is a hole. The fine beam of electrons are allowed only to move outside like this. The electron beam which is coming from the anode are made to incident on a nickel crystal. So this can be called as incident beam of electrons. Incident beam of electrons. Whenever electron beam incident on the nickel crystal. So second important point of the apparatus, nickel crystal, or simply we can say Ni, nickel crystal. Why we have to choose a nickel crystal means the nickel crystal having a perfect arrangement of the atoms like this. It acts like a three-dimensional diffraction grating. So that means the space between the atomic planes of the nickel crystal is comparable to the wavelength of the electron beam. So whenever wavelength of electron beam and the atomic planes of the nickel crystal both are equal, what happened generally? When electron beam falls on this nickel crystal, around the corners of the atoms, the electron beam gets scattered or bends or diffracted. The bending electron beam can again scattered in all the possible directions like this. So for example, the electron beam which is scattered in all the directions may be superposed. Whenever they are superposing, the intensity varied between the maximum and the minimum. It may be having a constructive and a destructive diffraction takes place. And the diffraction is the property of the wave. And then we can prove the wave nature of the electron. That's why we selected a nickel crystal. It is second one. So here the electron beam which is scattered from the nickel crystal will move like this. Scattered in all the possible directions. In a particular direction, I am turning the mobile galvanometer or detector and I am collecting all the electron beam like this. So this beam can be called as scattered beam of electron or a diffracted beam of electrons. Diffracted beam of electrons or scattered beam of electrons. So this is scattered beam of electrons or diffracted beam of electrons are collected by the mobile detector. So it is important third part of the apparatus, detector or collector. So what is the function of the detector here? The detector or collector contain, it is a mobile detector. So it can move 360 degrees. So throughout the crystal, the detector can move. And also wherever we want, we can fix at a particular place. So here the electron beam which is scattered from the nickel crystal is collected by the mobile detector. The mobile detector contains one scale and also one sensitive galvanometer. Once if electron beam is instant on this one, the galvanometer can give the deflection. So some current flowing through the circuit. So the deflection through the galvanometer is always directly proportional to the intensity of the wave. More the deflection, more the current. More the current means more the intensity. So like so, we can understand how the current passes and how the intensity of the electron beam also we can understand. That is a mobile detector. So there is some angle between the incident beam of electrons and the scattered beam of electrons which is equal to theta. The theta can be called scattering angle. So it is important the apparatus different parts of the Davis and Germer experiment. Now how we can confirm or how we can prove the de Broglie relation and how to find the wavelength of electron. Now check here once again. Whenever the filament gets heated by supplying potential difference by using a low tension battery, the electron beam is emitted from the filament, and now we have to apply some accelerating potential by using high tension battery. The electron beam is made to incident on the anode, and since anode contains a fine hole, the fine beam of electrons are passing through anode, and again they are incident on the nickel crystal. So since the nickel crystal contains atomic planes nearly comparable to the space wavelength of electron beam, all the electron beam get scattered. The scattered beam of electron can move in all the possible directions. In a particular direction, we can fix the mobile detector, we can collect the electrons, and then we can find the current flowing through the galvanometer also. Here current flowing through galvanometer is directly proportional to intensity of the wave. More the deflection, more the current, more the current, more the intensity of the wave. But the experiment is conducted from 44. So for, where we are conducting experiment means potential difference V is equal to from 44 volt to up to 68 volt. We conducted experiment. For example, first trial we have to place 44 volt and electron beam incident on the nickel crystal, again collected by the collector or detector. What is the scattering angle we have to calculate. So first we applied, for example, 44 volt, and we have to note down the angle, scattering angle also. Next 45 volt scattering angle, and also 46, 47, 48 up to 68 volt we have to conduct an experiment. In each and every case, what we have to note down? The current flowing through the galvanometer and also intensity of the wave we have to note down. From the experiment, what Davis and Germer observed means at a potential difference of 54 volt, when we applied an accelerating potential of the 54 volt, so potential difference V is equal to 54 volt and scattering angle theta is equal to 50 degree, maximum current flowing through circuit. So maximum current flowing through circuit means intensity of the wave also maximum, and that why intensity of the wave maximum means all the electron beam which are scattered from the nickel crystal are superposed, and then they have the highest peak of the curve we observed. If you draw a simple graph here, I am taking intensity on y-axis, intensity of the electron beam taken on y-axis, and here either a potential difference or angle is taken on x-axis. What is the nature of the graph means we can observe the nature of the graph like this. Remaining all the cases, the intensity of the wave is not a maximum, but here in one particular case the intensity is a maximum. At what particular case means potential difference V is equal to 54 volt and a scattering angle theta is equal to 50 degree, intensity of the electron beam is equal to maximum. So that indicates it will confirm the wave nature of the electrons. So that you have to understand. Sometimes in competitive exams question may be asked from Davis and Germer experiment at what potential or what scattering angle the intensity of the electron beam is a maximum. So at a potential difference of 54 volt and theta is equal to 50 degree, the intensity of the electron beam is a maximum. So that will confirm generally the wave nature of electrons. Now we'll go simple theory. But how to find wavelength of electron? I'll give here a simple theory. I'll give. So from the experiment, I'll take a nickel crystal here. It is the nickel crystal which contains a large number of the atoms which are arranged in a particular order. So it is a nickel crystal. So it is arrangement of the atoms in the nickel crystal like this. So it is arrangement of the atoms in the nickel crystal, and as beam of electrons are incident on the nickel crystal like this. It is a incident beam of electrons, and the beam of electrons get scattered like this. It is a scattered beam of electron. It is an incident beam of electron. We can understand by using a direction also. So the angle between the incident beam of electron and the scattered beam of electron is called scattering angle theta. So here the angle between the surface of the nickel crystal and the incident beam of electrons can be called a glancing angle phi. Phi is equal to glancing angle and theta is equal to scattering angle. Here also this angle will be equal to pi, which is equal to glancing angle. So the space between any two atomic planes of the nickel crystal is equal to d. You should write. So it is experimentally calculated value by the scientist Bragg also he calculated. Now I'll take according to Bragg's law, or before that I'll give at what angle we observe the highest intensity of the wave. 54 volt, and also scattering angle is equal to 50 degree. Should write here. So right here, scattering angle theta is equal to 50 degree. Scattering angle theta is equal to 50. But from the figure, I'll find from the figure pi plus theta plus pi. I'll take here pi plus theta plus pi is equal to 180 degree. So here pi plus theta plus pi all together equal to 180. That equal to pi plus pi is equal to 2 pi plus theta value already we know 50 degree. Or take this value right side. 2 phi is equal to 180 minus theta, or phi is equal to 180 minus theta by 2 you should write. This phi is called glancing angle. The angle between the surface of the nickel crystal and incident beam of electron or scattered beam of electron is called a glancing angle. Therefore, phi is equal to 180 minus 50 by 2. That is equal to 65 degree. So this phi is called as a glancing angle. That is called a glancing angle. Phi is equal to 65. And next d is equal to, I'll take small d. So d is equal to nothing but called as spacing between, d is equal to spacing between two atomic planes of the nickel crystal. Two atomic planes of nickel crystal, but it is experimentally calculated value which is equal to 0.91 angstrom unit. The value of the d is equal to 0.91, and we know theta pi is equal to 65 degree. From Bragg's law, so he is also a scientist who first proved the wave nature of X-rays. He also conducted an experiment. He proved the wave nature of the X-rays, and whatever the relation used by the scientist Bragg, so same relation is taken by de Broglie, Davis and Germer. So from Bragg's law, 2d into sin phi, 2d into sin phi is equal to n lambda. Here d already we know the distance between the two atomic planes of the nickel crystal, and phi is equal to glancing angle, lambda wavelength of electrons we should calculate. Whenever intensity is the highest value means we can take n is equal to 1. For first order maximum, I'll take n is equal to 1. Here you can write n is equal to 1. Substitute all the values in this formula. Therefore, 2 into d value 0.91 into sin 65 equal to n value 1 into lambda. So that lambda value should calculate. So lambda is equal to 2 into 0.91 into sin 65 value should write 0. You should write this value 0.6093 will get the value. Or by calculating or by substituting and calculating all the values, we'll get a lambda is equal to 0.165 will get. We can substitute sin 65 value and all the values here will get here. It is a experimental value. Now we can multiply 2 into 0.91 divide this one 0.165 by 2 by 0.91 0.165 by 2 again by 0.91 okay, that is the experimental value. Say it is equation 1 calculated by Davis and Germer, but according to de Broglie I'll calculate it. So according to de Broglie's relation, according to de Broglie's hypothesis, we know the wavelength of electron already have given 12.27 by root V, one formula given, angstrom unit. But from the experiment at what wavelength we observed highest peak means 54 volt. I'll substitute the value of potential difference V is equal to 54 volt. Now check here, 12.27 by root 54. Simplify this one, 12.27 by root 54 value 7.35, approximately 7.35. Now divide this one, 12.27 by 1.67 angstrom. Lambda is equal to 1.67 angstrom. It is second one. So it is a theoretical value calculated by de Broglie. It is experimental value calculated by Davis and Germer. If you observe the first and second equations, both are having a very good agreement. So experimental value 0.165 angstrom and the theoretical value 0.167 angstrom. So theoretical value and experimental value both are having a good agreement. Hence we can prove the wave nature of electrons. Hence Davis and Germer experiment confirmed the wave nature of the electrons. That's all. But after it is around 1927. But the same experiment conducted by G.P. Thomson in 1928. And later 1984 also the same experiment conducted by the new experiments. They also confirmed like various matter waves or particles behave like a wave, and also dual nature they are having. So based on this de Broglie hypothesis or quantum mechanics, we can develop the electron microscope and also various instruments also in day-to-day life. So that is the dual nature of matter. So theory part of the chapter completed, and yesterday to groups we sent already PUC textbook, particular chapter, NCERT chapter, and also our material also question to answer type we provided in your groups. So go through the chapter thoroughly, and next week we'll conduct one exam. And at the same time, so in textbook we have the numericals. Last exercise problems are there, around 19 problems are there. So tomorrow I'll start numericals. So for that, try to write and separate book all the problems, or whatever the running notes you are writing, so write the problems. For example, 11.1 first problem some space, and write second problem some space, like that 19 problems. So try to write in your book. Then we'll discuss in tomorrow class. Okay, thank you.